Right.
Ever daydream about a world where, like, robots are just taking care of all the boring stuff
Yeah.
and companies are, rolling in cash and everyone gets a paycheck, even if they're, I don't know, like teaching dolphins to play underwater chess or something? Well, that's the future we're going to be diving into today.
Sounds intriguing.
Right. So we're looking at this whole idea with this article by Jay Poole. It's called Get This, How Robotic Labor Growth Can Boost Company Profits and Fund Universal Basic Income, UBI.
Catchy title.
It really is. And it just came out last week, so it's super relevant. Basically, Poole's arguing that robots could be like the key to everyone having it pretty good. But of course, we're not just going to, gush about robots all day. We're going to dig into the potential downsides too, the thorns on this rose-colored robot. You get it.
I'm all for a balanced look.
Totally. So robots, right? The article talks about all these industries that could be completely different. And we're not just talking about like factories replacing workers with robot arms, although there's that too. But think about it. Automated customer service, self-driving delivery trucks, even robot surgeons.
Wow. When you put it that way, it really does seem like things could change a lot.
Oh, absolutely. And Poole argues that all this could mean companies making a lot more money, and in a few really important ways. The first one is pretty obvious, cutting down on labor costs. I mean, that's one of the biggest expenses for most businesses, right? Just imagine cutting those costs by like 90%.
That's a pretty significant chunk of change.
You said it. But it doesn't even stop there. Think about it. Robots, they don't need coffee breaks.
Yeah.
They don't get burned out working late. Well, I guess they kind of ARE the midnight oil, haha.
Right.
You know what I mean? They don't need sick days. They just work. For companies, that translates to productivity all the time, and they can scale things up so easily. Got a huge order, just add more robots to the line. No need to find and train new people.
What I find really interesting is that Poole backs all of this up with, actual numbers. He talks about studies that show certain companies could see their profits go up by 15%, even 30%. And in some industries like manufacturing and agriculture, we could be talking about profits doubling or even tripling. These industries, they rely so heavily on, manual labor, so they're like primed for this kind of robotic revolution.
Yeah, those numbers are kind of mind-blowing. But what about the cost of actually getting all these robots in the first place? That's got to be a huge barrier, especially for smaller businesses, right?
That's true. Setting up those robotic systems can be a big investment upfront. And for smaller businesses especially, it can seem, well, impossible. But as Poole points out, those initial costs, they often end up paying for themselves over time. Think about it. You're spending less on labor and getting way more done. That adds up to a pretty impressive return on your investment over time. It's not even just about, swapping out workers for robots. It's about completely changing how a business works.
Okay, so robots could mean big profits. That's pretty clear. But what about us, the humans? We can't just ignore the fact that robots taking over jobs is kind of a scary thought. What happens when those machines are doing work that people used to do?
That's where this idea of universal basic income comes in, UBI for short.
UBI, right.
It's basically like a safety net. Everyone gets a certain amount of money, no matter what their job is, or even if they have one. So, like, as automation changes things and people need to find new jobs, they've got this financial cushion.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Having something to fall back on during those big shifts would be huge. But let's be real for a sec. Could companies actually afford to pay for something like that, even with all those robot profits?
That's the big question, right? And Poole, he actually addresses that directly. He suggests taking a chunk of the extra profits that companies get specifically because of automation and putting it towards a UBI fund.
So like a robot tax.
Kind of. He uses the example of 50%. So say a company's profits go up by 30% because of their robot workforce, 15% of that would go to UBI.
Huh, like a robotic dividend. I like that.
Right.
But how would that even work in reality? Would it be a whole separate tax just for companies with robots?
Poole talks about a few different ways to do it. One idea is a tax on those automation profits. Yeah, kind of like a windfall tax.
A windfall tax? Remind me what that is again.
Imagine, like you're walking down the street and you find a $20 bill just lying there. That's a windfall. Governments sometimes use a windfall tax to take a bit of those unexpected gains, usually to fund, social programs.
Oh, right.
So in this case, it'd be about companies sharing a portion of those robot-generated profits to help everyone out.
So it's not that companies wouldn't benefit from all the efficiency stuff. It's more like recognizing that this whole shift affects everyone,
Yeah.
and we all got to work together.
Exactly. Another thing Poole talks about is a public-private partnership.
Okay, interesting.
Like, the government could give companies incentives to contribute to UBI funds voluntarily.
Right.
That way, businesses still get to enjoy the benefits of being innovative, but they're also, helping out the people whose jobs are affected by that innovation.
It's kind of moving away from that whole robots are going to take our jobs narrative and towards something where technology actually helps everyone, right? Like instead of being scared of robots, maybe they could actually help build a fairer future.
That's definitely the optimistic view, and it's something worth striving for. Just think, what if all that increased productivity from automation actually did lead to everyone having it better? Not just the people at the top? It's a pretty
Mhm.
compelling thought.
Totally. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Mhm.
There are always downsides, right?
Mhm.
What are some of the things that could go wrong with this whole robot-funded UBI thing?
One thing that worries me is, like, what if this whole thing actually makes inequality worse?
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, think about it. Even with UBI, what if those huge robot profits just end up in the pockets of, like, a tiny group of people at the top,
Right.
and everyone else is still struggling, even with that basic income?
So it's not enough to just have UBI. We have to make sure that the wealth gets spread around more fairly.
Exactly. Poole talks a lot about this, how we need to be really proactive with policy making. We need like really well-designed social safety nets and ways to redistribute wealth so that the gap between the rich and the poor doesn't just keep getting bigger?
Right. Yeah.
He actually argues that if we just do UBI without fixing those bigger problems, it could actually make inequality even worse.
It'd be like trying to fix a broken leg with a Band-Aid, right? You
Yeah.
got to address the root of the problem.
Exactly. And that's where like the human element comes back in. We can't forget about things like job retraining programs to help people find new roles.
Yeah.
And we need to invest in education that gives people the skills they'll need in this like crazy fast changing job market.
It's not like everyone can just become a robot technician overnight.
Right. And we can't forget about entrepreneurship.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Like, as automation changes the whole employment landscape, it's even more important to create an environment where people feel like they can start their own businesses?
Totally. It's almost like we're talking about a completely different way of thinking about work and income and how technology fits into all that.
Yeah.
This isn't just about, like, robots putting cars together anymore, is it?
Not even close. It makes you rethink, like, how society is structured. It really highlights how important it is to be adaptable, to always be learning, and to really think ahead and shape the future we want, not just react to whatever happens?
Absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground today with Poole's article, from the nitty-gritty of how robot-funded UBI might actually work to these bigger questions about fairness and how the very idea of work is changing. For everyone listening, what would you say is the most important thing to remember as we try to navigate this whole new world of robots and AI?
If I had to pick just one thing, it's that the future isn't set in stone. We actually get to decide what it looks like through the choices we make today. Poole's article, it's like a call to action. It's about thinking critically, talking to each other, and getting involved in shaping a future where technology makes things better for everyone.
So it's not about trying to, like, stop progress. It's about making sure that progress benefits humanity.
Exactly. It's about using all this incredible technology to make a future that's better for everyone, a future that's fairer and more prosperous. That's the challenge and the opportunity we have right in front of us.
Lots to think about, for sure. We've gone from the nuts and bolts of robots doing our jobs to, like, these huge, almost philosophical questions about society and what it all means. To everyone listening, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. As we step into this new era, we'll leave you with this question. What role will you play in shaping the future? Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.